What did the weird kid in your school do? Story 1. He was weird as hell, but he smeared dog crap on his bully's combination lock before school, and everybody called the bully crap hands for 2.5 years. We called the kid Doo-Doo Brown for most of a semester because he pooped his pants in class, but we were only so hard on him because less than a month before, he absolutely humiliated a classmate who pissed herself in class. Well, I only went so hard on him for that reason. She was my friend, and it only happened because the teacher refused to let her go to the bathroom, and she didn't want to get in trouble. But maybe the others were just mean. It was middle school, and we were all frickin' feral with hormones and general rage. I told my son that if he asks to go to the bathroom and his teacher says no, if he's about to pee himself, I told him to walk out and go. No one is going to control him to that point that he pees himself. I told him that if he gets in trouble, tell them to call me. I will fight tooth and nail for him not to be in trouble. The mental anguish that comes with losing your bladder/bowels will never be rectified. One girl I knew let loose at her cash register because her boss wouldn't let her go. Then he wouldn't let her go home and change, so she stood there all day soaked in her urine. No way on earth would someone be allowed to do that to me or my son. I have IBS, and it started to affect me while I was in school before I was diagnosed. The school was giving me a hard time. Not all teachers, but enough that my parents said that they would back me up and told me to just go. They actually did have to come in on several occasions because I did get in trouble, and my dad was not having any of it, including me getting detention because I had to go to the bathroom. I would literally get told to stop in the halls, and it's like, look, unless you want me to poop myself, no. I did have to bring in doctor's notes so that they would stop and leave me alone, and even then they would still give me a hard time. I appreciate my dad. Story 2. He brought a whole rotisserie chicken to class and ate it like an apple during a lecture. Was his name Max? Because my nephew kind of had a reputation for doing that. He disappeared at his sister's graduation and came back with a rotisserie chicken and ate the whole thing during the ceremony. He'd run a couple of miles to pick it up at a store. Apparently he did it every day during lunch. Reminds me of this one time I was in a Psych 101 class in high school, and I was slowly and quietly opening some tinfoil wrapped leftovers to eat while we watched an educational movie over the course of like 10 plus minutes. Finally, the teacher just yelled for whoever was making the tinfoil sounds to just hurry up and open the damn thing. Apparently I wasn't being as quiet as I thought. In college, I worked in Total Wine and More with a guy we all called Weird Tom. Tom was an older guy who kind of kept to himself, but was nice enough, basically just a general laborer. The reason we called him Weird Tom was that you could be talking to him for 5 minutes or standing next to him in a meeting for 30 minutes, and he would randomly pull something half-eaten out of his pocket and take another bite. Then just put it back, lol. And I'm not talking about snacks. I mean like grilled cheese sandwiches, burgers, sushi, a burrito. I still laugh about it. Story 3. He used to get made fun of for having a Thomas the Tank Engine rolling backpack, so he set it on fire in the bathroom. We had a lot of charity type things where you would donate school supplies to poor kids, and what ended up happening was that these super gangsta high schoolers walked around with Dora the Explorer backpacks, and it became a cool thing to do. Story 4. Hit the school bully over the head with a mini baseball bat and split his head open wide. The school bully was absolutely brutal, but I winced seeing it. Weird kid was charged with aggravated battery and expelled from school. He ended up becoming a very successful diesel mechanic. He wasn't weird at all, but didn't fit into what the school and suburb considered to be normal. I was probably one of the weird kids at my school. I got bullied often, including once being held down by older boys while the other one literally took a running kick at my balls. Could not walk right for a while after that. I just remember going blind from the pain. I had another kid that bullied me in art class. I had tried to get the teacher's/principal's attention to no avail. One day I had enough. We were working with different colored oil paints. When our canisters would empty at our desks, we went up to the teacher's desk and got more paint from large paint jars. That day, when the bully started on me, I waited for the teacher to look away. I grabbed 2 full paint jars and opened them over his head. I got in trouble for that one, suspended I think. My parents let me play video games for 3 days off of school and I had fun. The bully didn't get in trouble at school, but his parents grounded him, though, for ruining his clothes. If you were my child, I would be blind with rage for you. If you came home and told me someone took a running kick at your balls while you were being held down, Jesus effing Christ, I don't know how parents keep their cool in those situations. I think too many parents are in the camp of thinking bullying is a normal part of school, won't admit their kid might be a little strange in social terms, and just think it will stop either by aging out or the kid finally doing something about it. It's an old school way of thinking. I have a 4-year-old and I sometimes ponder what I would/will do the first time I pick her up from school crying about some other kid, not sure what the answer is. We had a weird kid at school who got bullied a lot because he was just quiet, and new, and kinda scrawny. When it came time to come to blows, he beat the ever-living crap out of 3 kids at once. I watched the entire thing unfold and couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm not sure if he was trained or just experienced, but he didn't get bullied much after that. If anything, he got tested but never bullied the same way. Don't judge a book by its cover, I guess. I was the bullied kid at school. One of my bullies offered me a free shot once with no consequences. He thought I'd punch him. I had my math textbooks in my gym bag. I gave him a roundhouse swing with that. Knocked him flat. He got up and chased me, pissed and angry. I reminded him of his promise and he stopped chasing. We had a mutual respect after that. Although, the one time I started telling someone about the incident, he cornered me, not wanting the school to hear I knocked him flat. He died of an OD somewhere between our 10th and 15th year reunion. My best friend in high school was charged for beating the absolute hell out of a school bully in 9th grade. I moved to the town in 8th grade, and from what I heard, he was really popular until 7th grade. He got injured in football and broke both his tibia and fibula. He was chop-blocked. I was told by someone who saw that he kicked his own knee with the same foot, and was in such bad shock he was playing with it on the field. Then, of course, he gained weight and got pretty reserved. The dude was always a big dude and probably still the nicest guy I know, but it was like the school bully pushed him too far in the gym one day when the teacher walked out of the room and my buddy went ballistic. I still talk to the guy from time to time, but I'll always remember him being so chill and cool other than that one instance when I used to play Star Wars and stuff and Hearts of Iron together, and I worked with his dad when I was about 17 and his dad knew I smoked cigs. He said, "I won't tell your parents, just convince Brandon to get out of the house and go on a walk with you, please," since I'd go take a walk around the block while I smoked. Story 5. Climbed into the first floor lab through the window as the chemistry lesson was in progress. Posed dramatically at the door, announced, "Join me in the corridors of time," and left. You just reminded me of our hot weird guy, Pat. He was extremely hot, but extremely weird. I had a crush on him, but also avoided one-on-one interactions with him because it was always confusing. Anyway, one day between the end of the school day and the beginning of band practice, he disappeared. The drumline was looking for him and they thought he went to 7-Eleven or something, but I remember I saw his weird old station wagon in the parking lot, and this was before cell phones, so everyone was like, weird. Right before practice started, he casually strolled into the instrument room in a filthy t-shirt that was ripped to shreds. His glasses were broken. There were twigs in his hair, and his face was scratched up. Everyone just stared at him until one guy was like, "What the hell, Pat?" And Pat just said, "Birds." Then he got his drums together and headed out to the field like that. It's been 20 years and I have no idea what happened to Pat, but I would not be surprised by anything. Story 6. Hey, I've got one from the perspective of a teacher and it's pretty wholesome. I had one of the weird kids a few years back. The kid was sent to the principal's office for the wackiest crap like putting chewing gum in other people's hair, but also his own hair, etc. Didn't have a lot of friends. Anyway, I also had a special needs girl in that class. She was older than every other kid, and an adult helper was there to help her write down the class and explain things to her when needed. Anyway, the girl farted. It just went off and she looked up and I could see in her eyes that she was panicking. Being a special needs girl is always hard, but to be the special needs girl who farted in class full of 12-year-olds was even worse. Now, to the credit of my students, they wouldn't have mocked her outwardly, and they were pretty understanding of this girl's situation, but before realizing that it was her, they would have made comments and asked who had farted. Already I could see a few kids looking up from their papers and all. They all had the look of, "Who farted?" and some were already laughing. But then, out of nowhere, the weird knight in golden armor looked up from his test, grinning ear to ear, and ripped the nastiest fart I've ever heard. He was a kid, but this thing sounded like the scream of a dying animal. Like, I'm almost 30 and I don't sound like that. Plus, he moaned the most obscene sound ever. It sounded like, ooh woo, years before ooh woo was even a thing. The entire class was either disgusted or dying of laughter. Weird Kid said he was sorry and then went off a second time with a pained look on his face. I had caught up to what he had done and why he had done it. I yelled at him just enough to be believable, asked him to go to the bathroom if he needed to, and asked him to stay at the end of the class. The entire class knew he had screwed up. They all went back to their test, and the Weird Kid acted like nothing had happened. At the end of the class, everyone left, but I told the Weird Kid to wait at the door. The girl's helper came to me and was like, "Okay, quick heads up, I think he did it on purpose to help the girl." And I was like, "Yeah, I think so too, but let him say that because maybe it wasn't it." I was 99% sure it was what he had done, but anyway, I let him back in and asked him why he had done that. I also told him I thought I knew, and he admitted that yes, he had done it to cover for the girl because he didn't want her to feel bad about it, and that way people laughed at him, but that was because he was always doing things people laughed at. It was okay. I told him it was a cool thing to do, and he agreed and went on with his day like it was nothing. Goddamn hero. That is very wholesome. I'm late to the show, but I have a similar anecdote where I took the fall for a huge stinker. My late grandmother was pretty sick with cancer at the time, and she was starting to lose control of herself a bit. I was right behind her as we were walking up the steps into the church, and she let out a huge one. One that was loud and immediately noxious. Without missing a beat, my 13-year-old self turned around, politely apologized to the rest of my family, and said my stomach was really hurting. When we got to the pew, my grandma just patted my hand. They knew, but still, it was an easy sword to fall on. Reminds me of Billy Madison. As a special needs middle school teacher myself, I have developed a best practice of owning every fart. I don't care if it came from the kid sitting furthest from me, I did it, end of story. Otherwise, they can get really mean really fast. I'd kill for a freaking hero like this kid in my classes. The weirdos are always my favorites. I had a friend whose parents didn't like my mom and told him we couldn't hang out. We always did anyway. One time we were up to no good, as kids do, and got caught. In the principal's office, I took the blame for both my friends knowing they would be punished severely, and my mom would understand when I told her the situation. It was funny to me, and they thought I was a hero. This was probably grade 4. Story 7. He had a tooth he was able to easily remove and put back in for some reason, and would do it for a quarter. Surprisingly, I think he actually made quite a bit of money doing it because I constantly saw people paying him, so well, I guess. I was able to do that too. In fact, it was both upper lateral incisors and they were attached to a plate that I could knock out of place with my tongue. I never tried to make money on it. Darn. I did like knocking them halfway out, giving someone a quick vampire smile before pushing it back into place, having them do a double take and pretending like nothing happened. Story 8. Mouthed off to a teacher who got so angry he stormed down the aisle, grabbed the kid's desk and slid it, with the kid still sitting in it, all the way to the back of the class, and made him sit there for weeks later. The same kid had a big brother who caught a fly in the library, popped it into his mouth and swallowed it whole. We later heard after high school that the kid was goofing around with a gun and accidentally gut-shot his big brother. I have a similar story. The weird kid never talked, was probably disabled and no one noticed. In 4th grade, our old school, old lady teacher got mad at his unresponsiveness one day, walked up to him, picked up his desk, which was amazing for her size and age, lifted it, and poured the contents onto the ground. After a fair bit of her yelling, she made him sit there with no desk for the rest of the day. The kid didn't blink the entire time. Oddly, no one told a parent or staff member. It just wasn't done back then. A similar thing happened to me in the 7th grade. I was taking a test and didn't know the answers, so I just sat there not marking anything. He just got up and grabbed my arm and yanked me out of the classroom. He was extremely angry. Every one of my classmates was just completely shocked. He took me to a different classroom and just shoved me down into a seat and said, "You don't even try." By the way, I have Asperger's, so it's more common than you would think that teachers behave this way and get away with it. That reminds me of grade 7. We had a teacher that was fairly muscular. One of the boys pissed him off a bit too much one day. The teacher picked up the boy's desk with the boy in it. Seat and desk in one piece. lifted it so the boy was eyeball height to the teacher for a few seconds, then put the boy and desk back down. The whole class was well behaved for the rest of the year. There was this kid in 4th grade who always lost his homework. We had the desks where they were hollow with the opening facing toward you. His desk was full of papers he'd put in it and then couldn't find again. One day he had lost his work on the desk again, and our teacher snapped, told him to move, then picked up the desk, lifted it over her head, and dumped everything on the floor. It was actually pretty scary. This isn't really a weird kid situation, but I'm seeing all these comments about a teacher who shouldn't be a teacher, and I immediately had flashbacks to 3rd grade. From the jump, it was obvious as hell he was fresh out of school, and it was his first year teaching. While I would agree with other kids who never had his class, but would always regard him as the fun teacher, it was clear that he definitely should not have been teaching 3rd graders. He had this game called Flinch, which already sounds like a game way too mature for 8 to 9-year-olds, and it was basically an even more hardcore handicap dodgeball game within a 3-foot vicinity, where only he gets a ball, and the premise was we all stand beside our desks, while he stands up front, holding the hard red rubber ball, and the rules were if he pretended to throw it at you and you flinched, you're out. But also, if he really does throw it and you fail to block it, you're also out, and this man was so cold with it. One time, he threw the ball towards me, which bounced off the wall by my desk and hit me straight in the face at a speed of like 15 miles per hour. And the following dialogue was like, him, "Ooh, oh my god, are you okay?" I had a deranged teacher in my freshman year of high school math class, and she had a desk in the back corner of the room that she would send kids to if they were being distracting. And like, not even in a big deal kind of way, just like someone makes a wisecrack kind of thing. She'd holler out that they were banished to the hinterlands and send them to the desk in the corner. It only distracted the class even more because it was so ridiculous. She'd also regularly bring up the IRS and how they sneak around following people and will slash the tires on your car and similar. We were freshman year high school students. No one really knew anything about the IRS and taxes, so again, just more distraction because everyone was laughing about how crazy she was being. Story 9. We were playing baseball. He was either on the first or second base, can't remember exactly, and I was next to him. He said, "Watch this, I'm gonna do something cool." He pulled his pants down and took a crap on the base. I was shocked that no one else saw it. I didn't know how to act. I was speechless. The kid batting got a hit, and then the kid who pooped on the base ran to the next base. Then the next kid went onto the base that had poop on it and slid. He was like, "Who the heck shat on the base?" Another gym class anecdote, we were running laps around the gym and a turd fell out of the weirdo Johnny's shorts. On the next lap, he reached down, picked up the turd and stuffed it in his sock and kept right on running, or so the story goes. Story 10. Dude brought a waffle maker to school and during PE he stayed hidden in the dressing room until they locked it, and then he chilled there and made some waffles for himself until the class ended and the dressing rooms were unlocked again. The smell of waffles was nice though. My middle child brought a toaster to school. Their locker was beside a plug in the hallway. They would make toast every day, but the cafeteria only had one toaster, so other kids started asking to use it. It was all fine until one day a teacher was wandering down the hallway and asked one of the kids, "What are you all lined up for? Waiting to use the toaster?" The teacher followed the line around the corner and found my child and their locker mini kitchen. I got a phone call that day. Story 11. There was a girl in high school who would hiss at people and carry around a stuffed pumpkin. She told me that I was fun to bully because I was too nice and wouldn't do anything about it when I got bullied by a weird kid. I found that some of the losers or nerds were the worst bullies of all. There was a guy who everyone hated and picked on. One day, I was walking down the corridor when he pushed me into the lockers and injured my shoulder. Suddenly, though, he was on the floor and some guy was beating the crap out of him. It was one of the cool kids who bullied me, but only in a verbal way. He'd say nasty things but never touched me physically. He was furious and said people like him don't get to be bullies when they don't even shower and have no friends. I said I disagreed with how he handled it but thanked him for sticking up for me, and he never bullied me again. I went to college in a STEM program, with all the nerds who got bullied in middle and high school. I was the only girl, and I was a huge dork. Not the right kind of dork to be accepted by the nerdy groups. I was this kind of weird and super into stuff like note-taking for my classes. I loved the coursework. I hadn't really expected that to be a problem at a university, but it was. The guys were brutal to me, talking about any of my interests. I'd be told how lame they were and what a loser I was. Guys would come up to me unprompted to crap over whatever hobby I was doing. If I aced a test, either I cheated or slept with the professor. If I failed, it was because girls just can't hack it and don't deserve to take up a spot in the program. Plus, there was all the typical physical bullying type crap, like guys threatening to run into me in the hallways, making it seem like they were going to grab me or taking my books or glasses and not giving them back. If you've ever wondered why there are so few women in name some nerdy niche, it's probably because it freaking sucks. I don't know how many nerds have convinced themselves that nerds are all good people. A lot of them are bullies who will absolutely take it out on someone else the second they have the chance. And a lot of the rest are cowards who see it and excuse it, so they don't feel morally obligated to help. The weird kid in my high school was a huge bully. My parents were/are friends with his parents, so I was always stuck around him from elementary to high school. He constantly made fun of my friend for his parents getting a divorce. My friend was never violent, but eventually snapped and beat the living crap out of him. Like, sent him to the hospital bad. And screw that kid. He'd steal, break someone's laptop, and pour water on cookies a girl made. But oh, he's a small nerd. He can't be a bully. I'm 35 now, and I still hate that kid. We hated him so much that we learned how to play chess and beat him in the chess club. And this was after he got his teeth kicked in. The kid wouldn't stop his BS, so we found a non-violent way to get him. Story 12. There was a quiet kid in my school, Alex, who always carried a big notebook and sat alone scribbling during breaks. One day, the art teacher asked him to share what he'd been working on. He had written an entire fantasy novel, complete with its own world, mythology, and languages. My class was amazed, and after that day, he was no longer seen as the weird kid, but as the creative genius no one had noticed before. No idea where he is now, though. I had a weird kid in school who was very socially awkward, but she was a gifted artist from when we were in kindergarten. We lived in a small town, so we were in school from then until we graduated. I think she works in graphic design or animation or something now, and her art was always so impressive I just couldn't believe it. I was a little too extroverted for her tastes, so we never were close, but I always admired her work at the school galleries. Oh wow, this is beautiful. I love it. I was, probably, the weird kid who had been bullied and was an outsider. Back then, Nirvana and Guns N' Roses were big. I tried so hard to fit in that I tried to copy the clothing style my schoolmates had. We were pretty poor and didn't really get awesome clothes, even though I am absolutely no grunge person. These days I am a huge techno music fan, which I am since the early 90s, since I found out that it exists, and tried to like Guns N' Roses. I am sorry, but I hate their music so hard. We had a family helper I absolutely adored, and she recorded the music for me onto a cassette tape so I could listen to it. I couldn't afford my own LPs or CDs back then. It didn't work. None accepted me still. I was still an outsider who got made fun of for my music liking. Besides techno, I also liked the Pet Shop Boys, Erasure, and David Hasselhoff. Once we were allowed to put up posters of our favorite musicians in our classroom, silly me chose a poster of David Hasselhoff. Had a huge crush on him back then. Story 13. For context, someone threw a banana peel across the classroom. It just so happened to land next to the weird kid. The teacher very stupidly thought it was the weird kid. Like, how is it? It flew across the room and landed beside them. Anyway, the kid proceeded to lose his crap after being accused, opened the window and tried jumping out of it. It was the 3rd floor. I wasn't there for it, but apparently he backed out or something, and so it became the famous story of our year group. Everyone knew about it. Oh man, the poor freaking kid was clearly going through a lot. One of my friends growing up was super poor. Their older brother had gotten a job at the local restaurant, so they had a small amount of extra spending money. They got their little brother a nice watch for their birthday one year. He was so proud of it, he told me, as it was one of the very few nice things he owned. Well, on day 2 of wearing it to school, one of the rich white kids in class got jealous and told the teacher my friend, who was Hispanic, had stolen it from them. My friend begged the teacher to see reason and that it truly was theirs. The teacher forced them to take it off and give it to the white kid. My friend's parents were non-English speakers, so they couldn't take care of them. We are all much older now, and he's still very angry about it, understandably. This reminds me of when I tried to get a juice box into the bin from across the room. There was a very irate dinner lady who would always yell at people, and she was talking to someone near the bin, but I hadn't really noticed her. I threw the juice box, and it went spiraling towards the bin. But then, the lady walked towards the arc of the juice box's fall. It slammed off of her back and bounced onto the floor. I went straight over there to beg for her mercy, but luckily she found it funny once I explained. Story 14. Emptied a fire extinguisher all over the auditorium stage. Attacked teachers with a yardstick, screaming, "I'm fighting the Mooney Men!" Emotionally scarred every girl he ever dated by threatening suicide on a nearly weekly basis. Plucked his hair out to the point of having to wear a hat for a semester, and then kept it all in a baggie. Developed a cocaine habit, and in every single example his father would bail him out and he would receive next to zero punishment. She started first grade 3 weeks into the year. It was her 5th school that year, and apparently, the nuns and her parents thought the nuns could discipline and control her. She was 8 years old and bigger than most of us in the 4th grade. It was a small school in an old house with 2 grades in each classroom. In the 2 days she was there, she clogged every sink and toilet in the school, including the boys' room. She went into the coat room and switched all the first graders' sweaters and lunches around. At lunch on the second day we ate in the classroom, she smashed her cherry pie into her own face and left it there, dripping off. She took her milk bottle to the back of the room, saw her nun walking back from the convent, and dive-bombed her with it. It landed 3 feet in front of her and exploded, but their sister's full-length habit protected her from injury. The grand finale was when the principal came up to our rooms, opened the connecting door, proceeded to list all of her transgressions, and spanked her in front of us while the student was standing. Sister was a tiny woman, so they were about the same height. Sister spanked her on the rear and she spanked Sister the same way. We thought the floor would open up and swallow this kid straight to hell. This went on for a couple more times until she grabbed the large wooden rosary Sister wore at her waist and tried to wrap it around her neck. The 2 nuns had to pull her off. She did not return to school. Obviously, she had major mental issues, but you don't realize that when you're 9 years old. Story 15. Somehow accessed porn on the school computer. Threatened SA a girl who was passing a note to a friend in class about it. The teacher grabbed it, and when the teacher read it, you just saw the horror on her face. I was the TA for my high school digital photography class. Had one of the freshmen quiet kids use the expensive photo printer paper to print off porn. He didn't even immediately grab it off the printer. Another student grabbed it and brought it to me. I had to bring it over to the teacher, and we went through the computers remotely till we figured out which student did it. Story 16. I was a weird kid. Did nothing in particular, but looking back, I was dealing with a crappy home life which definitely affected the way I was at school. Hey, same. I was an undiagnosed autistic latchkey kid, had no frickin' way to understand why everyone was constantly bullying me or how to make it stop. Even the teachers joined in sometimes. Parents, pretty much absent or preoccupied. Sibling frickin' hated me too and helped the bullies. Developed a lot of crappy coping mechanisms that I'm still working through in my mid-30s. I think I'm doing extremely well nowadays, have overcome almost all of my social issues, and am traveling the world with beautiful, amazing friends all over the globe. I'm going to try and live and study in Germany next. Everyone back home is generally doing far worse than I am, but I don't forgive them. Story 17. 3rd graders. She was a new kid who always came to school smelling like piss. One day at recess, she told me her father stuck his thing in her at night. I never told a soul, and I am unable to forget it. She was gone the next year. Poor kid, I wonder where she ended up. It's pretty common for kids experiencing SA to soil themselves. It's a form of self-protection. Additionally, there also could be physical damage that causes incontinence. As an 8-year-old, it's likely you had a fear/trauma reaction to being told that, flight or freeze. Most kids are unable to articulate something like that to an adult. Don't beat yourself up if you feel guilty for not telling someone what that girl told you. I had a very similar thing told to me, and it haunted me. I was about 28 by the time I was able to get it out, and that was well after getting a SW degree and 4 years into a child advocacy position. The teachers at your school, if this was in the last 40 or so years, should have had a suspicion, by the urine smell alone. Hopefully the reason she was gone was because she had been removed from the home. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.